Hello, this is PokerVIP for PokerVIP.com. This time in PLO office we are going to focus on 3-betting pre-flop. This is the first part. We are going to discuss about theory, and in the second part we are going to have examples. So let's get started. 3-bet. What is a 3-bet? It's a third bet, and on pre-flop it means it's re-raise to an opening raise. Sometimes people make a mistake that on the flop re-raise or raise would be third bet, it would be re-raise, so it's a third bet. Pre-flop call is the first one, raise is the second one, and when you re-raise someone it's the third bet. And 3-betting in PLO can make a lot of money, or it's a good way to lose a lot of money, depending on how good you are in 3-betting. And what I have seen is that 3-betting or calling 3-bets is one of the most common problems, especially for small stakes players. Often when people get to know basics in PLO, then the next problem is 3-bet situations. What to 3-bet, when to 3-bet, when to call 3-bets, how to proceed post-flop, and I hope this video clarifies some of the things. First, we need to ask ourselves, why do we 3-bet? And mainly we have three different reasons. First one is equity edge, meaning that when our range crosses opponent range, then we definitely want to play bigger pots. Of course, in PLO, equities run so close compared to hold'em that even premium hand versus widest range is often 60-40 favorite, while in hold'em aces versus anything is 80% favorite. We need to emphasize on using our equity edge. Second reason is isolating. If we have a target player and we want to play heads-up pots with him, we can use 3-bet to isolate. This is one thing that doesn't really work at really low stakes. If you go to PLO 10 or to smaller stakes, then you will find that isolation doesn't really work. Like in PLO 5, even if you 3-bet someone, there's often 2 or 3 cold callers. So my advice would be that in really small stakes, PLO 10 and over, you focus on 3-betting for equity edge, because isolation often just doesn't work. The next one is exploiting overfolding. This means that if we have an opponent that folds to 3-bet some of the time and then on the flop plays really fit and fold poker, we can 3-bet a ton and just pick up the dead money when he's folding like 70% of the flops. So let's focus on equity edge. There are different ways to make money in poker. The main reasons are, or as I said in earlier videos, it's our opponent mistakes minus our own mistakes. So the one who makes more mistakes often loses the money. And there are some ways to gain advantage. One is that our range is stronger, so we are playing better hands than our opponents. Second one is that we have a skill edge. We are better players than our opponents. And the third one is positional edge, meaning that we are playing in position. So if two players are, both of them are as good as each other, then the one with position often makes money, or is going to make money in the long run, or the one who is playing with stronger hands is making more money, or if the one is better player. So when we have a strong hands, we definitely want to play big pots. And perfect situation is to get stacks in with better pre-flop equity. That's well improved plus EV. We don't have to make any post-flop decisions. If we get the money in with over 50% equity, we are going to make money in the long run. As soon as we are going to do post-flop decisions, then we have to estimate if it's plus EV or not. But if we can get money in with better hand, it's always good. often, unless the opponent is short stack or he 4-bets, then it's not going to happen, but sometimes we can create SPR1 or less than 1 with 1.5 with aces in heads up pot. Now you can watch the video about playing aces to get an idea why this SPR 1.5 is the borderline. And often the best thing that can happen with crappy aces is to create SPR1 and shove flop in heads up pot. Crappy aces is a pain to play post flop because 7 out of 8 times it doesn't hit the top set, and then you have nothing if it's roughly aces. Here I think it's important to say that aces is a funny hand in PLO. So many players 3-bet only aces, especially at micros and small stakes. Or even for regulars, the 3-betting ranges are really weighted to aces. Like 80% of the 3-bets are with aces. And sometimes I wonder, why is it so? And the answer is that in Hold'em, people know that aces is the best hand, kings is the second best hands, then pocket queens, ace king comes at third position, and like aces versus 9-8 suited, they know that aces is 80% favorite. So it's easy to 3-bet all the value hands. In PLO, where equities run so close, and hand like ace, king, queen, 10 double suited, people don't know how strong it is. And they think that, oh, those rundowns, they are drawing hands. I don't want to create big pot until I know I have hit the hand. Well, pocket aces is a drawing hand. Even if you have ace, ace, king, king double suited, if the flop is 10, 9, 8 of different suit, then your hand is pretty much garbage. But people know that aces is a favorite versus non-aces hand pre-flop. That is the fact that they know. As soon as the hand changes, it's ace, king, king, they don't know if it's a favorite or not. But aces is always a small favorite, so they 3-bet it for value. And that's where things go wrong. If you 3-bet crappy aces and you are not really sure of what you're doing, often what happens that either you overfold on the flop or you overplay them and stack off with just overpair. We want to create bigger pots with premium hands. And medium strength aces, weak aces are not premium hands. And here, what we're trying to do is to dominate our opponent. Which means that, like, if we have ace, ace, jack 10 double suited, now pretty much everything we're going to hit is nuts or to the nuts. If we flop top 2 pairs, they are often quite strong. If we flop top set, it's often really strong. We can flop flush draws, we can flop straights, we can flop overpair with flush draw, maybe even a cut shot. So this hand is really good examples. Of course, it's the best hand in PLO, along with ace, ace, king, king double suited. But you can see that, especially in 3-bet pots where opponents stack off lightly, like if the flop comes something like jack 9, 5 with the clubs draw. So we have top pair, overpair and flush draw. Opponent might stack off with any jack and flush draw, or he might stack off with open-ender and flush draw. And you can see that he doesn't have that many outs. Some other examples are king, king, queen, queen, double suited, double paired hands. This hand is going to hit a lot of times. It has king high flush draw. We can often dominate our opponent's smaller flush draws. It's going to hit top sets. And especially if the flop is something like king 9, 7 and the opponent has pocket 9s, he is going to stack off for sure. Even bottom sets are going to stack off in PLO in 3-bet pots. And premium rundowns, Broadway rundowns double suited, ace, king, queen, 10, everything we're going to hit is quite nutty. Top 2 pairs, nut straights, high flush draws. And this domination is really good way of making money in 3-bet pots, and for opponents it's really good way to lose their money. Of course, it works the other way around too. If you often find yourself calling 3-bets with medium strength hands, you will find that quite often you're thinking that you put the money in with nice equity and opponent is dominating your draws, and you actually have pretty small equity. Second reason was isolating. And we want to isolate weaker players to heads-up pots. Now, when we compare multi-way pots and heads-up pots, in multi-way pots, there's less room to play poker. Like, if the flop is 5-way, there's practically no reason to start bluffing. So then it's just a matter of fact who hits the flop. And if none hits the flops, then on the turn and river someone might make a semi-bluffs, but often it's just about who hits the board and who doesn't. So our edge comes only from the hand strength and our range. But as soon as we enter heads-up pots, now we have a lot of post-flop tools to make our opponent fold a better hand. So we want to isolate with hands that are not good for multi-way pots. And when we change possible multi-way pots into a heads-up pot, we increase the value of our non-nutty components. Like, let's take an example, Jack 10 8-7. We have a Jack high flush draw, and let's assume cutoff opens, we are on the button. Now, if we call, often small blind calls, big blind calls, and we have a 4-way pot. And now Jack high flush draw, if we hit the Jack high flush 4-way pot, we really don't know if we can bet it for value, or if someone bets, can we even bluff catch, or if we hit something like 2 pairs and a cut shot, bottom 2 pairs and open ender. Those are often quite nasty in multi-way pots. But now if we 3-bet and create a heads-up pot, now the Jack high flush is quite strong. And even top and bottom 2 pairs are quite strong. Some other examples are like King 9-7-6 double suited, or 8-8-7-7 with 1 suit. The idea is that when we want to isolate opponents and the SPR is decent 3-5, we want to have a hand that has good board coverage, which means that it's going to hit a lot of flops. So it needs to have multiple ways of hitting the flop. So a lot of components. And each of these hands can make a straights, can make flushes. 8-8-7-7 can make a set. Top 2 hands can make some 2 pairs along with something else. So there's a lot of ways to hit the flop, which means that we have more options to fold, to barrel, make a 2-3 barrel bluff, and so on and so on. Or if opponent don't, we can raise as a semi-bluff or for value. Compared to if our hand is ace-ace 7-deuce rainbow, and we want to isolate opponent which is not going to fold often post-flop, then we are going to miss the flop quite often, which means that we will have a hard time on turn and rivers. Of course, if the opponent is overfolding, then these are nice hands to isolate those ones too. And this brings us to the next part, which is exploiting overfolding. And this works against fit or fold post-flop players with high fold to c-bet in 3-bet pots. Often, some weaklist players don't really think about ranges. They just think that, okay, he 3-bet me, let's see if I hit anything. And if they don't hit 2 pairs or better, they are just going to fold. Or they call once and fold on the turn. When you can identify this type of player, they are often quite tight pre-flop, something like 15 and 10, and then they call 3-bets some of the time and fold to 70% to the c-bets on 3-bet pots. Now, what we can do is we can widen our isolation range. When we were talking about isolation, we had hands that had good board coverage. Now we can add more marginal hands. 9987. Kind of hand that if this weakish player opens, we don't really want to even call with this hand and create multi-way pot, because this hand just doesn't work in multi-way pot so that well. But we can isolate our opponent, create a heads-up pot, and get profit from the huge folding equity that we have on the flop. And of course, it's nice to have a hand that can hit something. Like if our hand is King 9 5 deuce rainbow or quad deuces, total garbage, then there's no point in making isolation 3-bet because we just cannot hit anything strong. Although a lot of our profit comes from opponent's tendency to overfold, he's going to hit some of the time. And it's nice that if we can hit some of the times too. Some other examples are Ace King 7 6. Of course, you might think that these might work in multi-way pots too, but Ace King 7 6, the gap between 7 6 and Ace King is quite big. So often we are going to hit top and bottom two pairs, which is not going to improve. Or 10 8 6 4 double suited, run down but 3 caps. Not that strong. Pretty hand, but not super strong. So if we have position to these really tight ones, or if they are opening from cutoff or button and we are on the blinds, we can 3-bet with more marginal hands and just make them fold a ton. So now we talk about when to 3-bet. It's important also to understand when not to 3-bet. First, we should think about pushing versus pulling. And it means that when we have a pushing hand, the hand benefits if we can make people fold pre-flop. And when we have a pulling hand, our hand benefits the more players there are on the flop. And those Jack 10 8 7 with one suit is a pushing hand, or in the wider range 9 9 8 7 suited is a pushing hand. They work a lot better in a heads-up pot. But when we have a pulling hand, we can dominate with nut value. And the most classical example is Ace 10 9 8 with suited ace. We can hit some pretty damn strong hands. Like if the board is 6 7 of diamonds, then we have a monster. But also, if we want to 3-bet this hand, then problem comes that if the flop is something like Queen 9 8, we have bottom two pairs and a cut shot. It's not that strong. Or the board is, let's say it's Ace Jack 5. We have a weak ace, or it's Ace King 8. We have top and bottom two pairs. So if this 10 9 8 was something like Queen Jack 10, or even Jack 10 9, then it looks slightly more about 3-betting hands. But Ace 10 9 8 or Ace 9 8 7 with suited ace, these are hands that we can dominate with their nut value if we hit something. And when we hit the nuts and board is quite locked board, let's say we flop the nut flush, then our hand is pretty strong and the only hand that can beat us is straight flush or if the board pairs. So when we flop the nut flush, the more players there are on the pot, the more value we get. Because the only way to get value is that if someone has a set or flush. And if there's 5 opponents in the flop, it's pretty much 5 times more likely that happens. Or if we hit the nut flush draw, then we want to keep as many players to the pot as possible. Or we have a nut wrap in a rainbow board. When we have a lot of nut out, we really want to have as many opponents on the hand as possible. So those are the pulling hands. And another reason when not to 3-bet is when you are against aggressive 4-bet range. Like you have this maniac that 4-bets with a lot of hands. His 4-bet range is definitely a lot wider than just aces. Then to 3-bet him with non-premium hands works for him, because now his 4-bet range is most likely a bit stronger than our 3-bet range if we include all of the non-premium hands, which means that he's going to dominate us. We call the 4-bet, we hit something, we get the money in just to see that he dominates our flush draw. Or we have a straight draw and he dominates it. So if you have a really aggressive player who has wide 4-bet range, you have to have a game plan. What do I want to 3-bet against that player? So if he is pretty much 4-betting with the ton, then you have to 3-bet with hands that you're happy to call the 4-bet, or you're happy to shove with the 5-bet. So always have a game plan. So this might look like a simple thing that, okay, yes, let's 3-bet strong hands. But often the problems start from the flop. Even when people have nice 3-bet ranges, they are often lost on the flop. Like, when should I c-bet? When should I stack off? My opponent raises, what do I do? And pretty much always, if we have any information from our opponent, we need to use that information. And the idea is to use that information before we start to 3-bet. We should have a game plan, and then we just execute it. And on the next video, next part of 3-betting, I'm going to show you some examples in which situations against which opponents we're going to 3-bet and when not to 3-bet. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it clarifies the strategy behind 3-betting. Definitely you should do it. And if you're having hard time in 3-bet pots, then just start working on them. Make 3-bets, analyze the hands later, see what happens, where did it go wrong, and where not. And if you're having hard time against players who 3-bet you a lot, especially in position, like if player on your left is really aggressive and he's 3-betting like 20% of the hands versus you, and you find it hard to play against him, then write down, why is it so hard? What makes it hard? What does he do that is so hard for you to adjust? Because then when you figure out why it's so successful, then you can do it too. So every time when an opponent does something to you that you find really hard to deal with, then think about it and start doing it for the others. But I see you on the next video. Until then, have fun with 3-betting. This was PokerVIP video. My name is Kyberi, and see you on the next time. Bye bye.